And separate from the vaccine facility, on another back 40, was their huge aspartame facility, and it was black sludge. Well, folks, you can go online and look at the black sludge. I mean, just give you an example of how crazy it is. Since 1981, when they approved this, you are eating E. coli crap. That is aspartame, now in over 10,000 products. Dr. D, you want to tell folks briefly about that, and then your bio?
Yeah, I'll try to be the bio real brief. My background before I went into medicine in the 70s was I was trained in infectious disease and worked under a bioweaponeer, Dr. Robert Brown. In the 1997, I spoke at Human Life International in Zurich, Switzerland, on the Super Soldier program, which they tried to recruit me at UCLA in 1978. I turned them down. And I also spoke against fetal tissue transplantation, which was projects going on all across America, from Boulder to U of Texas, etc. And after my talk, they gave me a plunk down in front of me, a foot of documents about 3 projects. The first 2 projects were the plasmid, genetically engineered tetanus vaccine, was to create antibodies to cause first trimester abortions, primarily to reduce the population by causing a spontaneous miscarriage in women. The second project was a special virus project, which they also tried to recruit me in 1974 to go to Uganda for the CIA and finish my PhD in virology. I turned them down. This project was a mycobacteria, which is carrying an RNA retrovirus. The virus is, in fact, genetically made from at least 3 different retroviruses, including Visna, the feline leukemia virus, and also green monkey virus. These are weapons that were originally conceived by the Nazis in the 1930s and completed by our government, by the CDC, etc. But the most scary project...
Let me just stop you for a moment. For those that don't know, and this sounds ridiculous, I'm trying to recruit him, that's who the CIA recruits, is doctors, is scientists, because these are professionals that have proven they can follow orders and carry out complex procedures. My dad is a dentist and oral surgeon. And they tried to recruit him and a bunch of other Dallas top-of-their-class oral surgeons to be part of and we were going to have to move to Maryland, and my dad, it was double the money. He said no. I remember the conversations around the table when I was like 10 years old, and they came back a year later, and all he would tell them is it was cybernetics because he knew how to implant things in bone. So for those that don't know, the military-industrial complex hits up what I would say, probably a third of your specialized doctors and people?
Yeah, they look for people that have a bent toward doing research. So a lot of doctors, only maybe 5% really like to do research. The rest of them just want to go off and do procedures and have a practice. But anyway,
my whole point is this is widespread.
Oh yeah, this is standard. This is not a unusual thing. This is standard to call through, and just like the Rhodes Scholarship, they put 300 Rhodes Scholars through every year. 10% when they do their psychological testing are a little bit psychotic. They're kind of strange. They'll do things no matter what, and they get a carte blanche. Now the third project was the most scary of all, and this was a project where they told me all the details, that they were actually going to exhume whalers from 1918 pandemic in the permafrost, and they were going to take a gene bioengine with a supercomputer and rebuild the 1918 swine flu. That flu, by the way, also was a byproduct of a bioweapons project's vaccine project that was a typhus vaccine that they passed through pigs in Kansas, and it therefore had pig flu and human flu. And I went over the genetics letter by DNA letter with Dr. Henry L. Nyman 3 years ago.
And by the way, they now admit that they have, with the Human Genome Project, rebuilt that flu. And I remember 12, 13 years ago when this was first breaking in the late 90s, that it was rumored they were going to rebuild it. Now they admit they have, but quote, for research.
Yeah, and these are all in public documents now. I had it 1997, March 6th, given to me by these scientists and doctors who smuggled the documents out of the World Health Organization. They were going to take this, and then they were going to add avian genes and insert it into the bird population in Asia. And then they were going to later, quote, cause the release of bridging viruses that will allow it to jump into humans and other animals. That's just happened. Now, whether this wave is the big one, I don't know, but I can tell you what Napolitano is telling us, that watch out for the next wave. There's almost certainly at least 2 substrains. The one in America is not very lethal. It's like a bad flu. But the one in Mexico City, if there's hundreds dead or even 100 dead out of, say, 2,000, That's a pretty high lethality rate. And we're talking
Is that
about,
because it's been there longer and mutated into a worse?
Well, it could be several reasons. Like,
or is it because they're sick down there and aren't healthy?
Well, when you're unhealthy, you have more free radicals in your body, or if you're exposed to toxins, like Dr. Tenpenny said, if you want to take a virus and you want to make that virus mutate and become more aggressive, you can insert it into an animal and actually inject the animal with toxins or poisons, and it'll actually make that virus more aggressive and it'll make it mutate faster. So what's probably happening is a simple process of recombination. We know that they inserted the H5N1, and there's specific genes. So when the genetics come out, there's a gene deletion on the PB2 gene that makes it completely bypass interleukin-4 in all mammals. So there's no warning system at all. It's even worse than in 1918.
So it gets through the defenses of the body, and I want you to get back into that in the time we've got before Steve Quayle comes up. But the key here is every doctor I've talked to on and off air is saying, and they'll especially say off air. On air, they say it's suspicious. Off air, they say, no way the way this virus is set up with pig, human, and bird, this thing is designer.
Yeah, I can visualize in my mind that they had a lab truck spraying it around Mexico City or the favelas around it, the slums, where you have sickened and weak populations. But the fact is that now the bird populations in all continents now have these lethal genes. It's going to bridge from birds, say, to cattle, humans, pigs, God knows what. And this is the first of many waves. In the steamship age, it took months for the next wave to happen. My grandmother lost a brother and a sister, and little sister died due to the swine flu in 1918. The brother was so upset by his sister, he went to hug her in her coffin, and the next week they buried him. So I have a personal reason. The primary reason why I got into radio to get the truth out, besides civil defense for issues like nuclear war, etc., the primary number one reason with these documents I was given 12 years ago to warn people, when they keep telling you that there's going to be an avian flu pandemic, and a lot of doctors didn't believe it, I had the inside documents, I had the genetics, I had the background on infectious disease. They were doing everything they can to create it. It wouldn't happen spontaneously. They now have released a bridging virus, which is this new super hybrid, and future waves, if this is not the big one, are going to come, and they're going to come quickly.
Now, normally they say a virus peaks in about 90 days, but I mean, they all vary.
It all depends on the genetics. You see, this is going to recombine. It's this strain. The one in America seems to be relatively mild. We don't have anybody dead, but in Mexico City, and as it changes and recombines, it can recombine very quickly.
But how do we know that it's not the same virus? It's just that they're...
We don't know because they won't release the data. They never release the data.
Well, they are acting very secretive, and I've had call after call on and off air from Mexico where they say 70% of the people they know are sick. You go to the hospital, people are vomiting everywhere, blood coming out their noses. And this is similar to what we saw in 1918.
Right.
Where
it causes a hemorrhagic diathesis. It causes a cytokine storm. And if it's bad enough, the stronger your immune system, more deadly it is. So that's why people need to pay attention. It's not just how bad this is now. It's that the virus is then going to get into other animals, dogs, cats, birds, and as it recombines there, because it has the receptor binding domain to get back to humans, we now have a returning vector system where it can get into cattle. It can get into people's pets. We already have a pandemic where birds all over the world, I have reports from game wardens in British Columbia, from Washington State, from Oregon.
Pigs are dying all over the United States.
Exactly.
That's in the mainstream news.
Right, so now we have the proof that there is a pandemic in birds. There's now a pandemic in pigs, and the likelihood is that when this recombines in future waves, and they've done this because their plan is, and they were told me this in these documents, these physicians gave me these documents, said this is to reduce the world population by at least 2 billion. Okay, they are doing everything. They're behind schedule. All of the public documents.
And they use their staged terror attacks of 9/11 to put the control grid in to tell you it's for brown-skinned guys in caves. And then now they admit, oh, this Homeland Security is for you, the gun owners. You're the number one threat in veterans. So they need us to be straitjacketed and to be listed as the enemies. So when they move with a mass plague, we stand down.
Exactly, and their whole idea is the statement by Kissinger just a few weeks ago was that the American public will be disarmed by September because they plan on waves between now and September that'll be sufficient, that'll be basically will protect you if you'll pass in your guns and come to our civil detention camps. Oh. And right now the strain is supposedly sensitive to oseltamivir or Tamiflu, which of course Mr. Satan himself has shares in it. Rumsfeld, but the fact is this is going to require resistance extremely fast within days. So it's useless. Vaccines will be useless. This will continue to mutate and change. The only thing is self-quarantine at home, and of course a whole series of nutraceuticals, and they can check with me on that, but there are things that will block it. The government could have installed a system called Aeroclave, which was developed with Homeland Security, but they haven't done it to actually clear all aircraft. They could have had a biohazard Center for Disease Control.
Do mask help? Because we confirm.
Yes, you need a nanomask. You need a nanoparticle mask. Regular droplet masks that the doctors and nurses have won't do anything. That's why it didn't stop the coronavirus or SARS. This is going to be a really big mess because the doctors are not trained how to do infectious control properly, and they will have casualties.
But even a regular mask reduces some. I mean, it'll block a larger.
A little bit. I would not,
because the virus will be within a.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to block some, but you want to have.
Thank you, Dr. Deagle. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Listening to GCN, the world leader in independent talk radio.